we have begun. Thank you, guys. Welcome back to the Young Talkers podcast. It's been an eventful week, and we have a lot of stories to break down, a lot of tragic events to break down. So we'll start off with the worst news, which is another new shooting takes place in USA in Atlanta, and this shooting has taken the lives of 8 people, were shot dead, and in 3 massage parlors. And again, it's been done by a rather young white male. And so, yeah, I think it's fair to call this a terrorist attack. We often never call attacks done by white people terrorist attacks. We just write them off as mental health issues, but I think this is a terrorist attack. And it seems to be racially provoked, as he picked locations such as spas, and we believe, and news and the people believe, that he is targeting Asian women because of the COVID crisis. So it's a very disgusting thing that has happened in USA, especially considering the times we live in. This is the last thing anyone would have wanted. uh, 6 of the people killed were Asian, so there's clearly provocation from the shooter. So yeah, so
Yeah, that there's a anti-Asian sentiment here in the United States on the rise, and this was only exemplified by this shooting, where, as Gulal said, he specifically targeted salons where primarily Asian people go. And this is not a isolated incident. This is happening all around the country, where Asian people are facing increasing hate. And many famous people like athlete Jeremy Lin, he's an Asian basketball player. He's spoken about it, and him being famous while playing basketball did not stop someone from calling him coronavirus on the court. And while, if you've played sports, there's a lot of trash talking going on in this court, but still, it's never acceptable to call someone that because of their race. And this is just truly sad what happened. And what's the problem here is that the police are not labeling it a hate crime. They're just saying it's a normal shooting because shootings are just that normal in America. When in reality, it was clear a hate crime because he targeted salons with primarily Asian customers.
Yeah, so you're right. This has been an ongoing war waged on Asians, people who look Asian, people who could be Chinese, and they just call coronavirus if they're just walking down the street. And very elderly Asian man was also pushed. A very old Asian man was also pushed by someone because he is Asian and because the COVID-19 originated in China. So there's been this onslaught of racist attacks. And you're right, the police department, the police sheriff, in fact, went on a Zoom call where he spoke to, I don't know who, but just giving telling people about the situation. He came out in sort of sympathizing with the shooter instead of sympathizing with the people who were killed. In fact, if you watch that video, he says it's been a bad day for the shooter. He's had a rough day. I mean, that's so awful for a police officer to say something like that. In fact, he should be condemning his actions. First thing should be said is not that he's having a bad day, that he's a disgusting person, and the worst thing should happen to him next. But that will never happen because, as we know, I mean, the police most of the time does look at situations in such a when it's a white shooter, he's never shot on sight, he's always arrested first. But if it's a black or a Mexican shooter, he's always shot on sight without even having sufficient evidence if it's him. So this is just the racism that's been built in, and that's another example of that.
Moving on to our next topic, another quite sad one is the collapse of democracy in Myanmar, including a complete coup by their military and the arrest of their democratic leader and Nobel Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi. And since the election in Myanmar that took place in November, where the pro democracy party won, and the party backed by the Myanmar military lost, the Myanmar military essentially said no, the election results are fraudulent, even though independent third parties that monitored the election stated there was no evidence of fraud. And the military just disregarded all reason, all facts, committed a coup, arrested democratic leaders. And after that, the natural reaction to losing your democracy is protests, which the police and military have suppressed. Gulal, your take?
Yeah, you can see that they have completely taken over the country. Although I must say that the prime minister wasn't exactly the image that, when she won the prize, she was regarded as being this hero for the people of Myanmar, and she was going to do great things. Although she didn't follow it up with a lot of great things, she became one of those populists who has a certain image, but in reality isn't doing much. But although she was a Democrat, at the end of the day, she did. Believe in a democracy where people get a chance to decide who their leader should be, and it can't be a monarchy or a forced enterprise or group of people who lead the country. So it's sad to see what's happening in Myanmar, and it's also more sad to see that very few people are speaking out or talking about it. I know a lot of things are happening across the world, but organizations such as the UN or at least governments of specific countries can come out and do certain things and at least make a statement that we condemn what is happening in Myanmar or we do this. But there's just not been that much revolt from a lot of other countries. And as we speak, a couple of days back, newspapers have been completely banned in Myanmar. So the people of Myanmar aren't receiving newspapers, they're not receiving news. So they don't know what's happening in their own country. And that's the most scary thing, And earlier, when the coup did take place, a lot of politicians were dragged out of their homes, put in vans and in cars, don't know taken where, just put in jails. And it's just, there's no outsource of news, and that makes the situation even more scary because you don't know when someone might die, when some things might escalate. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, this is just showing the incompetency of the UN, where they've met multiple times since their protest. They've said, we don't like the protests. Like a baby says, I don't like this food, but again, hasn't done anything about it. Essentially, bowed down to the military like a baby bows down to parents. And the United States waited almost a month before sanctioning the Myanmar military, did absolutely nothing. Joe Biden did absolutely nothing, despite Joe Biden's main platform being we are going to reclaim US as a world power, which Trump adapted an isolationist strategy, and Joe Biden promised to change that. And he had an opportunity to collapse on his promise by condemning the Myanmar protests, the brutality against the Myanmar protests right away. Instead, he waited a month until he faced backlash and all of that. And I mean, it just shows how little care there is truly for the world, for democracy around the world.
Yeah, but again, we must not forget that the people of Myanmar are still out there. They're still protesting. People are dying every day. People are getting shot because the military really does not care. But there is a strong revolt, a strong group of people out there still protesting, marching down the streets. So there is that. The people of Myanmar do not want this, and they're ready to get rid of this military. But they still need international pressure, international support, which seems to be lacking overall.
And the problem here is that there's strong growing sentiment not only amongst the people of Myanmar who are protesting valiantly that countries such as China are behind this protest because China has extensive business interests in the country of Myanmar, and their democratic, the pro-democracy party, has shown some sense of anti-China sentiment because, again, China with their Belt and Road Initiative have come in as the savior. But what happens, as we see in Pakistan, as we see in countries in Africa, they end up placing countries in a debt trap, and the pro-democracy party was going to change this. And while again, as I stated, the UN tried to do something, the two anti-democracy members of the UN Security Council, China and Russia, both blocked efforts to do anything about the Myanmar protests to help the democracy. So it just fueling the sentiment that potentially these countries with business interests are behind this coup.
Again, yeah, always whenever there's a country with resources and it's placed very well geographically on a map, countries, bigger countries are after that country, because if they can manipulate the situation there by doing anything, by talking politics or uh, doing the dirty work. Like USA has done a lot of time, so has Russia and China, supplying arms and all of that. If they do that, then they gain complete control over that country. They start making air bases over there. They start making it a second base for their military, and that just gives them more power over the world. So this is clearly seen. There are some countries with motives here, but I don't think the people of Myanmar will be manipulated easily. We can only hope for the best that the generals of this military coup realize what they've done, and they pull back, and they're jailed, and they are put through as much as possible for their crimes.
Yep.
Now, moving on to our next topic, which is, now we've talked about a lot of global issues, coming down to something more native, and that is the rising cases in Mumbai, Maharashtra. For the past couple of weeks, cases have absolutely jumped very quickly. We were getting like 300, 200 cases perhaps, and then it went all of a sudden touching 1,000. And then the next week it touched about 2,000. And today it's around, I believe yesterday we got around 2,500 to 2,300 cases. So cases are jumping, and that has caused my school to stop calling us physically to school. We used to go 3 days a week physically to school, and rest of the classes were online. But now all physical school seems to have stopped. Even the 10th graders in my school, their boards, which is an exam you give in 10th grade, it might either be delayed, or they might have to give it at home. So the cases are on the rise, and that's caused a lot of things to change. Yeah.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and remember to stay safe, and thank you again.
Yep. Bye, guys.